All right, guys, welcome back to the Stellar Health Classroom. Today, I wanted to dive into everybody's favorite topic, and that is diet, nutrition. We talk about digestion at Stellar Health Awakening, but all things nutrition and diet. Now, nutrition and diet is a fraught subject in the health, wellness, fitness scene. We have plenty of people that are camped out in identities around their diet and nutrition, whether that's somebody who says they are keto, they are carnivore, they are vegan, so on and so forth. Understand that when it comes to what we talk about with nutrition and diet at Stellar Health Awakening, we are talking about nutrition, diet, eating, food, all of these things under the umbrella of increasing longevity and health span. Okay? And that's actually going to get us into the first topic we talk about with goals. But why do I have this listed? When you're thinking about how you should be eating, you should be thinking about a couple things, right? You should be thinking first and foremost about your goals, right? And why do I say this? Well, because if your goal is to, let's say, put on more muscle mass, then the way you're going to eat is going to be different than, say, if you want fat loss, which is going to be different than, say, if you're trying to eat to reduce symptoms of an autoimmune disease, which is going to be different than, say, if you're trying to eat to hold to a moral and ethical standard like maybe a vegan would do or something like that. Your goals really matter here. And unfortunately in the health and fitness scene, what happens is this all gets conflated. Right? Goals regardless, it's either macros or micros, right? You got to eat a certain amount of carbs or a certain amount of protein. Maybe, it depends what my goal is. The fitness scene has kind of commandeered the nutrition scene. So people's main thought around nutrition only comes down to how is this going to help me put on muscle or lose fat? And there is so much more to nutrition than just putting on muscle, losing fat, or your weight. But that's the main way, that's the gateway into thinking about nutrition. And it's not bad, it's correct. That is the main way that you're going to lose weight, lose fat, put on muscle. But there's way more there. So your goals really become important on how you eat, when you're gonna eat, why you're doing what you're doing. Fasting, for example. Is fasting the best way to get stronger or put on muscle in the gym? No, it is not. But it is maybe one strategy for health span and longevity, right? So goals really, really matter. You gotta get clear on your goals. You could be going through a season where your goal is to put on as much muscle mass as possible. Well, your diet and your nutrition are going to probably change than if before that season your goal was just to live a healthy, long life and eat as clean as you can, right? So your goals have to dictate it. If you don't have a clear goal, this starts to become very convoluted, how you should be eating, what you should be eating, when you should be eating. It's very easy to listen to somebody tell you need to eat this way and just go, oh, I guess I need to do that. Well, maybe. What is your goal? You got to get clear on your goal around nutrition and then make the changes and put that into place. So step number one, when it comes to diet, nutrition, everything like that, the way we look at it at Stellar Health is, what is your goal? Now, our goal usually when we're working with clients is to increase health span, increase longevity, reduce symptoms, help overcome some kind of chronic illness that maybe somebody is facing, autoimmune issue, something like that. But as we get deeper into our protocols, as coaching goes on, somebody might get healthy, be healed, and then they want to put on muscle mass or increase PRs in the gym or lose some body fat, whatever it is. That's going to change the prescription we give for the diet a little bit. Now there's overarching principles, but the fine-tunement, the rules that we follow will change based off of the individual, and that's how it should be. There should not be a one-size-fits-all diet, and we'll talk about that. The next thing we need to talk about is food allergies and food sensitivities. So again, for most people, when it comes to nutrition, it stops here. We know your goal. Hey man, you want to put on muscle? All right, we got to increase that protein. We got to make sure we're in a caloric surplus. Get after it. And that's it, right? That's the macronutrient world. Macros, if it fits your macros, a world that a lot of nutrition coaches live in, and it works, it is good. If you want to lose weight, if you want to put on weight, put on muscle, it does kind of come down to the law of thermodynamics and calories in, calories out. But here's where most nutrition fails in the modern era, is that it kind of just stops there. And all these other things we're going to talk about doesn't get talked about a lot unless you're camped in the health and wellness scene. And then it goes the other way. And this is kind of this macronutrient versus micronutrient world that a lot of the health and wellness or fitness people are kind of combating in. At Stellar Health Awakening, we take a holistic approach. We're trying to marry the two. So it becomes really important, no matter what your goal is that you understand if you have food allergies or food sensitivities. Why is this important? I mean, I think it's pretty clear. If you have food allergies, especially allergies, and you're eating something, that's causing an immune response. Any amount of an immune response is going to pull from that vital reserve, that kind of energy of the body. It's going to put you into a fight or flight state. It's going to make you inflamed. It's not good for you, right? So no matter what your goal is, that's not what we're looking for. Even if it's just performance-based, well, that's going to pull energy away from you hitting PRs in the gym. Obviously, this is an issue if we're thinking about health and wellness and longevity. Sensitivities are maybe less impactful than a straight up allergy, but even if you're sensitive to food, especially if you're eating those foods every single day, all the time, you're having little immune responses, and that again is pulling from that vital reserve that is causing an immune response, causing the body to be in that fight or flight state. And so we need to know these things. Now, how do we know these things? Well, you probably know if you have a food allergy because you have symptoms, but how do you know you have a food sensitivity? You probably need a test for this. That's what we do, Stellar Health Awakening. We have a food sensitivity test. And you could also probably, if you do an elimination diet and then add things back in, see if you have some sensitivities. Maybe you have some flushing, heart rate gets elevated, maybe some sniffles, some sneezing, stuff like that. That's maybe a sensitivity, right? So once you know your goal, you got to get clear on, do I have food allergies or food sensitivities? And you got to eliminate those foods if you want to have as optimal of a diet as possible for yourself. No matter what that goal is, this has to be there, okay? Number two, this one's really big in the fitness industry. Digestion capacity. This never gets talked about in the fitness industry. And what do I mean by this? Protein is all the rage these days. Got to get all that protein, 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 protein. And it is not the wrong message. It is the correct message. Protein is incredibly important as we age, helps not only put on muscle mass, but maintain muscle mass, tendon health, ligament health, the amino acid profile. All of that is very important. But what never really gets talked about is your individual ability to digest said protein. A lot of people, especially in the Western world, have an impaired digestion capacity specifically around protein. And I know some people might roll their eyes. This is 100% true. Most of us have an unhealthy gut environment. We aren't producing enough HCl, hydrochloric acid, in our gut. We aren't producing enough enzymes. And this has to do with, which we'll talk about, the actual just environment of the gut. And so when a nutrition coach or one of these fitness influencers tells you you need to be eating a gram of protein per pound of body weight, if you have impaired digestion, specifically around protein, you may be, let's say for me, I weigh 175 pounds. I eat 175 grams of protein. That gets into my gut. I have impaired protein digestion. I maybe only absorb 100 grams of that, maybe less. And then what else happens is I get protein farts. I get a bloated gut. My bowel movements aren't that great. And these are ways without getting testing, which you couldn't get testing for this. There's something called indican. Indican is a marker from a compound called indole. This is just biochemistry stuff. Tryptophan is one of the amino acids in protein. If we are having protein putrefaction, meaning that protein is just sitting in our gut, tryptophan, when it is kind of putrefying, produces something called indole. The way we would pick that up in a test is something called indican. If that's being picked up in your urine, it lets us know that you have impaired digestion. Okay, all that to say, Sean, I don't have the money to get testing, or I don't want to work with you. Heard, hurts my feelings, but heard. If you get protein farts, if you get bloating, if you get an upset stomach, anything like that from eating a lot of protein, you have impaired digestion capacity. So you might be eating a gram of protein per pound of body weight and not absorbing half of it. You never hear that from the fitness influencers do. Even some of the great ones, even some of the scientists out, the fitness scientists out there and stuff like that, they don't talk about this. This is really, really key. When you increase your capacity to digest, and specifically around protein, you actually might be able to get away with eating less protein, but absorbing 100% of it. I know this because I've done this, okay? So this is really, really important as well. Again, no matter what your goal is, we want to make sure we have a good level of digestion going on. We want to have the enzymes to help with protein, fat, carb breakdown. We want to have the bile acids to help with fat breakdown, the hydrochloric acid to help with protein breakdown, etc. Pepsin, all these things, right? If this isn't there, that's going to cause issues. It's going to cause stress on the body. If I have protein or other things sitting in my gut just kind of putrefying, one, that can cause malnutrition because, like I said, those amino acids, but other micronutrients are not being absorbed. That's going to cause, more stress on the body, more fight or flight. And again, this is a problem. So again, no matter what that goal is, food allergen sensitivities, need to know it. What's my capacity to digest? Need to know it, okay? The one that really plays into that is the environment of your gut. What does that look like? What do I mean by this? This is a big one. This is, what's your individualistic microbiome look like? Now, the microbiome gets talked a lot, rightfully so. In many ways, the microbiome kind of controls everything about us, our cravings, the gut-brain axis as far as where most of our neurotransmitters are made are in the gut. So our happiness, our mental health, all of it. We have like 10x the amount of microbes in our gut than we do human cells. So it's incredibly important, not only from a microbiome perspective, but also from an inflammatory perspective, from a, let's say, we kind of talked about it here, from an enzymatic perspective. So why do we need to know this? Well, let's say you have your goals, you know your food allergies, right? You know these things, but let's say you have no idea that you have H. pylori. H. pylori is one of the most prevalent bacterial overgrowths in the world. That can cause a lot of issues for digestion. That can cause a lot of issues for bowel movements. In the long run, it can be something that causes ulcers. It can be something that causes cancer, stomach cancer, right? So this is a huge issue. We have Candida. Candida is a yeast overgrowth. This one we really want to know because Candida feeds off of sugar, feeds off of high carbohydrate intake. So let's say you have a goal of you're a CrossFitter. You want to make it to the CrossFit Games or whatever. You're a weightlifter. You want to make it to national, something like that. Well, you got to train multiple times a day. Nutritionist comes along and says, man, we got to increase those carbs. They're not wrong. You do. You need carbohydrates for your training. But here's the issue. If you don't know your gut environment, let's say you have Candida. I'm training multiple times a day. I'm in a high fight or flight situation. Nutritionist says I need 400 grams of carbs a day. I have no idea I have Candida. You're eating 400 grams of carbs a day. What are you doing? You're feeding your Candida. Why is Candida a bad thing? Candida is a yeast overgrowth. And when we have that yeast overgrowth, it can be really prevalent. It can actually start getting into our bloodstream. It can cause a lot of toxic issues for our liver overload. It is not something we want to grow out of hand. But if we don't know that about ourselves and some nutritionist comes along and just is looking from the performance side of things, and they're not wrong, they are correct in giving you more carbohydrates to perform better, but they don't know the full picture. This is the problem with modern day nutrition coaching, is you have people either camped in the performance side or camped in the wellness side. And there needs to be a meeting in the middle. You need this full picture, no matter what this goal is, to have the best diet possible for yourself, okay? Now, some people might say, well, we don't have to know any of that. I can just be carnivore, okay? Let's talk about carnivore for a second. Why did carnivore get such prevalence? Well, it was because we had certain people like Jordan Peterson and other famous, Rogan and all these guys doing it, and reporting that their psoriasis or autoimmune issues completely went away. And they are not wrong. They did. But the why is important. The why comes right back to here, food allergies and sensitivities. All carnivore is an extreme elimination diet. You're literally eliminating everything but beef, eggs, whatever. And for most people, this is true. They aren't allergic or sensitive to those things. But it's very extreme. And for a lot of people, it's not something that's maintainable. And for a lot of people, their digestion capacity is impaired, so they're eating all this meat. That's messing them up. For a lot of people, they have a genetic disposition to higher amounts of cholesterol and saturated fat in their diet, actually do increase their likelihood of heart disease. Not everybody, but that is true. That is a genetic thing. When in reality, all these people needed to do if they were just trying to eat this way for autoimmune issues or health or whatever is just take a food allergy and sensitivity test and just get rid of those. It will be a lot easier to maintain. You will have a better understanding of the things that are causing sensitivities. They could have just gotten a test for their mucosal barrier, sensitivity, their digestion capacity, and their gut microbiome, and had a way more comprehensive diet than just going carnivore or going keto, you know? So I'm not hating on the people that do that. If you like to eat that way, that's awesome, but understand the why behind why some of those major elimination diets work. It's just these things taken to the extreme without the testing being done. Here's the beauty. You can work with us, we can get all this testing done and you don't have to do some extreme diet. We just get rid of some of the foods that are causing sensitivities. We make sure that we're increasing your digestion capacity, and we make sure we're doing an eradication protocol and improving your gut environment. And for a short time, there will be foods you cannot eat and you got to eliminate, but then we can reintroduce, right? And it's more holistic. So what is the prescription that we have at Stellar Health when it comes to digestion? Well, it is this idea of N equals 1. What does this mean? It means you as the individual are unique based off of these things. So we take a look through our testing, through the qualitative live life experience of you, meaning what are your goals, and we come up with a diet that works best for you. So if you are somebody that has, say, candida, you have candida, let's say you have impaired digestion, impaired digest, right? And you have food sensitivities, right? You have these things, but your goal is get stronger. Get stronger. Well, it's pretty simple here, guys. We're going to marry, right? Sorry if that's a little weird, but we're going to marry the macro world plus the micro world. They come together in perfect harmony. What do I mean by this? Well, we're going to figure out if your goal is to get stronger, increase muscle mass, whatever it is, what macronutrient profile do we need for you based off of your physical activity, you know, all the normal stuff that most nutrition has done out there. But then we're going to do your tests. We're going to see what is going on inside of your gut to make sure that this makes sense. And so if you are somebody that has candida, maybe for a short amount of time, we're going to actually do lower carbohydrates, or we're going to make sure that with the carbohydrates, you have a high amount of fiber. Okay? We're probably not going to have quick digesting sugars. And if we do, it's only going to be intra-workout type of thing, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not feeding that candida, like I said. Okay, but we want to make sure you do have carbohydrates though, because you're training and your goal is to get stronger, right? Impaired digestion, but your goal is to get stronger. Protein, what are we going to do? We're going to make sure that we're supplementing you with digestive enzymes. We're going to make sure that at first we're eating leaner proteins, easier digestible proteins. We're going to make sure that you're probably not eating 1 gram per pound of body weight at first, but you're supplementing with amino acids. You're supplementing with L-glutamine. If you have impaired digestion, you probably have an impaired mucosal barrier. So we're trying to fix your leaky gut. So we're taking things like L-glutamine, IgG powder, or colostrum, something like that. Collagen, right? Things like that. We are combining the micro with the macro. So we want to make sure you are eating protein and you are getting healthy aminos, but we want to make sure that we are also improving that digestion. Food sensitivities, we're just going to cut them out. Eliminate them, we're going to find alternatives, right? So that doesn't really impact the macros too much. It might at first be a learning curve, but that's how we do that, right? And then my goal is to get stronger. So we just want to make sure that we're marrying the macros with the micros. And so again, this is our philosophy at Stellar Health Awakening with nutrition. We want to make sure we are eating enough of the good things. What do I mean? What I've seen a lot over the years in coaching is that a lot of people that are in health and fitness that have been doing it for years, especially females, are actually under eating, okay? And at first, that works great for weight loss. We know this. It is true that for weight loss or muscle building, it is truly just macros in, calories out. That is what it is. However, if you are sitting in a calorie deficit for years on end, especially decades on end, you will put your body more into that fight or flight state. Cortisol will rise. We know cortisol rises when we are depriving ourselves of food, okay? Eventually, what we've talked about with our hormone cascade, that cortisol will actually tank. You'll become into an exhausted state. Your metabolism will slow down. Your thyroid will get messed up. And now you're not going to be able to lose weight anymore. And we're going to have to do something called reverse dieting. So when I say eat enough means eat enough food to fuel your lifestyle and activity. Now, we know some people that are on the other end of the spectrum, they're eating too much, right? Eat enough means eat right in alignment with your activity and your goals. Not more, not less, right? Fuel it. Now, if you're in that phase of I want to lose weight, maybe you do have to eat a little bit less. But if you eat less for too long, we already went over what happens. But of the good things, right? Because some people that only follow macros, they will make sure that they hit their macros by eating Pop-Tarts, right? By just straight up hitting pixie dust sugar, right? These are not things we want to do. We want to eat whole foods, as little processed as possible, okay? So the principle that we hold at Stellar Health Awakening of eat enough of the good things is truly that. Eat enough of your macronutrients, whatever based off of your goals is, but of whole foods that are low processed, that are not a food sensitivity or food allergy for you, that are not going to negatively impact you in a digestion capacity or a gut environment capacity. It is simple, but there is some testing or some experimentation that needs to be done. Do you need to camp yourself out, like I said, in keto, carnivore, veganism? No, you do not, right? This is a lot, once you know these things, is actually a way easier thing to follow the rest of your life than any of those other things, because it is not as extreme, it's not as hard to follow. And so at Stellar Health Awakening, again, we want to eat enough of the good things. Fuel your lifestyle, fuel your activity, fuel your goals, but make sure you're doing it with quality foods that aren't going to cause immune issues, that aren't going to cause digestion issues, and that aren't going to cause gut environment issues. If you want to know more about this for yourself, if that's getting your head spinning, you're like, oh man, like I think I maybe do have impaired digestion, whatever it is, let me know. Reach out to me. You can email me, you can comment, you can DM, you can follow us on Instagram. Let me know. I am taking a wait list right now for coaching. I have one practical left, I have an oral exam, and then we're hitting the ground running, guys. If you want to get in on one-on-one coaching with me, you want to know all of these things from not only your gut, but like we talked about, your hormones, your HRV, your liver, your oxidative stress. You want to know these things, or you're dealing with an autoimmune disease, whatever it is. You just want to live longer. You're into Brian Johnson and the longevity scene. Reach out to me. We can make this happen for you, and that's what I want to do. I want to help you live longer and better. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, if you have more questions about it, reach out, let me know. That's our diet, nutrition, and digestion, just kind of grand overview for Stellar Health Awakening. We can get lost in the weeds on a lot of this stuff, which we will. I'll make some videos on other things, but thank you guys, and I'll see you next week for another lesson.